Welcome back, designers. This video is going to be an overview of the various materials and tools that we will be using in 3D design. All right, I'm going to take time to show you each one of the tools that you need and go over some variations so that you can find what's right for you and ultimately spend as little money as possible in order to get the right result. We're also going to take a look at the materials that you're going to need. They are very specific so that we are all having a common experience. So you're going to want to get the exact materials that I show you. All right. In addition to that, I'm also going to try to explain when we will be using various materials or tools. And the reason for that is that although sometimes you can go out and some folks can go out and buy all of their materials all at once, other people have to sort of space it out. So if we're not going to be using the mat board until like 6 or 7 weeks into the semester, maybe you don't want to go out and buy that right away. All right, so I will tell you what you need sooner and what you will need later. All right. So let's jump right in. The first thing that we're going to be working with is, well, I guess let me back up a little bit. We're going to work with clay, and we're going to model some forms, and we're going to discover sort of a natural, in the truest sense, a natural starting point for the course. Right? Then we're going to move on, and we're going to do some linear explorations in wire. Right? Moving on to some planar form explorations using the mat board, right? And then we're going to actually come back to the clay, and ultimately we are going to end with some final work that's more in line with contemporary practice. Right? So, and I should say leading up to a very sort of 21st century contemporary practice. Right? But you still need to know and understand how to use these types of things. Right? So first and foremost is the clay. All right, so we're going to be starting with this. Right, the clay that we use is Le Beau Touché HM High Melt. Le Beau Touché HM High Melt. This is a wax and oil, never dries. All right, it's a modeling compound that you can use over and over and over again. So you'll be modeling some little heads like this ultimately by the end of the course here. So that's what we're going to do with that. All right. This clay can be bought on Amazon.com. You can find it all over the internet. But the best place to get it is actually at Riverside Art, which is local to all of us. They buy a bulk rate for me particularly, and because of that, they have the cheapest price I've seen it anywhere. Mm-hmm. Right, and this is not, people will ask, it is a type of plasticine. People will ask if they can use other materials, and I prefer to not teach people how to use materials that I'm not using. So this is the same material that I use in my studio. So it's not a student grade product, it's not a hobby grade product, this is professional modeling compound. Same stuff that I use on all my sculptures. Right? So if you've seen my Insta page or anything like that, you'll recognize the color because my studio is filled with it. Mm-hmm. Right, the next thing to work with the clay, right, you're going to need a couple things. Right? I'm showing you this because I'm going to get you the things that you need to make a modeling stand. So you don't have to worry about getting these materials, right? But I will take care of trying of getting this for you. Right? So these are just a couple of boards. I'm going to cut them on my table so for everybody. We'll figure out how to do that afterwards. We can talk about that at our first meeting. Right? Next thing is various clay tools. So I'll go back to bring this back up, I guess. Basically to work with clay, right, is all you really actually need is this. People have been working with clay since the beginning of time, literally, and so we only really need this. But to work on little tiny details, these are kind of they're kind of big and bulky, right? The simplest of tools, right, are going to be great. A butter knife, right? Don't steal one from your parents, Right? But if you find an old butter knife or something like that, this is an old knife that I've actually kind of shaped into a very sort of specific thing. At most art supply stores, you can find what is called an introductory pottery set. They usually say like an introductory pottery set. It'll have a bunch of different sticks like this with different shapes on them. Usually a pin tool like this one, right, and a couple of different sort of flats and whatnot. And these are usually about $10. Right? So it'll have a bunch of these. Right? And so you'll need some wooden tools, hopefully a pin tool, and some kind of wire loop. Right? There's lots of different things. So when I sculpt, I use almost exclusively this handmade wooden tool and this wire loop. Right? This is a fairly expensive one. You don't need to get that, but the simple intro pottery set will give you most of this, a butter knife, your hand, and you're pretty good to go. In order to measure, right, we're going to need, you will need a ruler, right? And very importantly, you will need a pair of calipers. Right, so these are calipers. Right? You can get these online for somewhere around $10-ish. I've seen them, they sell them at most of the art supply stores. They are used for measuring around things. Right? So, they measure around something like that. You can't measure the distance from here to here using a ruler. Right? So that just doesn't work. Okay, so that's that. Here's a different version. Maybe if you're digging around in your basement or your garage or wherever, you might find some of these. These are dividers. Right? These also work great for going around things and taking measurements on a three-dimensional object. Nice old set there. I actually, if anybody has these, and I collect these, so I'm always sort of looking for those. And so if you find some, you should hang on to those. They're great tools. Okay, all right, so that covers what we'll be doing in the beginning and the end with clay. Right? The next thing we're going to jump into is going to be working with linear forms. So to do that, we're going to work with wire. Right? So anybody who's familiar with piercing culture knows that the thickness of the wires is measured in reverse. So the thicker the wire, the lower the number. So this is this thickest wire, right, which comes in a little spool like this, is 16 gauge. Now in their syllabus I said 14 or 16 because some of the different stores some sell 14, some sell 16. Both will work fine. I can tell you that the 16 is a little bit easier to bend. Right? So if you're worried about bending the wire by hand, then you might want to search around for the actual 16 gauge wire like this. Right? A little spool like this usually costs around $10 or so. Mm-hmm. The next one is the 20 gauge wire, right? And this one. Now you can buy all of these usually at a hardware store. We'll have these. If you walk into the hardware store and you ask for wire, they're going to send you to the electrical section. Right? And that's not, we do not want color-coded coated wires or colored wires. Right? We want simple galvanized steel wire like this. I would prefer it if it was all the same color, right? Although sometimes there's some green wire that sometimes people use. Sometimes people use some of the gold wire. I find that the color is a little bit busy and distracts from the understanding of form, which is the more important thing. So I would prefer if it was all this simple silver galvanized wire. Mm-hmm. So this one, I was saying, is 20 gauge. Right, so 20 gauge wire there. Right, and this one is 24. All right, and so we're going to use them in different ways. And yes, you do need all three of them. And I have three little sort of cuttings here, which I can show you, so you can kind of, and you'll see this when one of the things about working three-dimensionally is everything's very tactile, and you will see and understand these sort of, these kind of thicknesses here. So you can see that there are three different thicknesses of wire there. Mm-hmm. So, in order to work with the wire, right, you're going to need a pair of needle nose pliers, right, like these, right, with a side cutter. All right, this little section here is the side cutter, so that cuts it. All right, you really only need one tool. All right, so you can see we can take this side cutter here. All right, cuts the wire very easily, all right, and then we can use the nose plier to bend it and shape it. Okay, so this is all you actually need to work with that. Now I have a whole bunch of different other ones here because maybe you don't want to go to the store. These cost about $12, $10 to $12. These ones are pretty ideal. Right? You can notice that they're a little bit over 8 inches long, right? And that's a nice size. Right, so you might be digging around in your basement or your garage and you might find a couple of other ones and maybe that works. When they're small like this, they're going to be harder to work with. Right? This is a little bit counterintuitive. Sometimes when people feel that they don't have a lot of hand strength, they think, oh, it will be easier for me if I work with a smaller tool. That is the exact opposite. If you don't feel like you have a lot of hand strength, working with the larger tool will be easier. The reason for this is that you can move farther back and you have greater leverage. So this is far easier to cut with than this smaller one. All right, so you don't want to buy the small one, and these are not that expensive. So the little tiny one's not so good. Now sometimes maybe you're digging around in your basement and you find one, but like this pair, it doesn't have the side cutter. Well, to do these projects, you don't have to have the side cutter on the needle nose plier. That doesn't matter. You could have a separate cutter. Right? So basically you need something that bends the wire and something that cuts the wire. Right? So that's kind of all there is. And whether it's this one's also pretty nice. This is Husky brand. That's from Home Depot. Lowe's makes a brand called Cobalt. If you have other cutters, right? These are sort of these front cutters here or side cutters. Lots of different sort of versions. It doesn't really matter. I would not recommend, right? I would not recommend using a Leatherman type tool like this. Again, it's a little bit on the small side, right? And tools like this, tools that do a lot of different things tend to not do anything really well, right? So these will not cut as good as this. Because this is small, they will not bend the wire as good. All right, so if you can get something like this one, that would be preferable. Okay. What else have I got on there? And the wires. All right. So then the next project that we're going to be working on, all right, is going to be the planar form project. Right? When we get started with doing the planar form projects, you're going to use Chipboard. Now, Chipboard is basically the stuff that cereal boxes are made of. Right? So I'm not saying that you need to start collecting cereal boxes now, but usually a couple weeks before, I ask people to start collecting up some cereal boxes. The cereal boxes, we throw, or we hopefully are recycling them. We recycle so many of them that it's basically an unlimited source of material. For the final projects, what we'll be using is mat board like this. Right? Sometimes called Bristol Board, sometimes called mat board. This is what you would use to mat a picture that was going in a frame. Right? So it's thicker than regular. It's a nice sort of, you can tell how sort of thick and durable sort of this is. Right? If you look here, right, get a kind of good sort of look at that right there. You can see that it's about the thickness of a coin. Right? So maybe about the thickness of the base. So if you're shopping and you find something called Bristol Board and it's thin and flimsy like a piece of paper, that's not the right Bristol Board. So this stuff, you can get it at AC Moore. It usually comes in big sheets, right? And based on the various different sizes that people might have something framed. So whatever size you get, it doesn't matter. We're going to be cutting it up into lots of little pieces. So how much on my syllabus, I say 3 to 4 sheets, but that kind of depends, and you determine based on what your final project is how much material you think you're going to need. Right? And I will run you through that whole process. So I usually recommend that people don't buy this till the end. Not to mention if you buy it earlier in the semester, it's probably going to go in the back of your car or in your closet or something like that, and it's going to get all damaged, right? Or get dirty or something like that. Right? So hold off on buying that as long as you can, unless you need to buy it earlier. Right? In order to work with this, you're going to need something to cut it. Now, the best thing for cutting mat board is a utility knife like this. All right? Doesn't matter what kind or what brand or anything like that, just a nice solid utility knife. You will also need a pair of scissors. So sometimes for making like curved sections and cuts in it, a nice pair of scissors is going to work. I don't have something to show. I don't need to show you scissors. An X-Acto knife like this can be very helpful for going in and cleaning up small edges, but it is not a replacement for this. Right? You are going to struggle immensely if you try to do all of your cuts with this only. Okay, so you don't, you could use that to supplement. I'll show you. Right? You could use that to supplement, but you don't want to use this exclusively. So if you have one of these, that could be a very helpful and good thing to have, but this is the one that you really want to make sure that you get. Right? In order to put things together, there are certain places where we can use things like some tape and things like that, but ultimately in your final projects, you're going to put them together using hot glue. All right, so a simple hot glue gun like this is basically all you need. This is a low temp hot glue gun. Right, there are a lot of different hot glue guns on the market. You can get high temp and you can have really large ones. These are what are going to be best for these size projects. Right? So maybe you already have one of these. If you have another type, you can try to use it. I can say that if you are working with a high temp hot glue gun, you are probably going to burn yourself more. It is more difficult to work with because it's hotter. It stays liquid longer, and sometimes people have more difficulty with that. So this is all you need. Something nice and simple. These are super cheap, and obviously you need some glue sticks. When I usually buy I don't even know how much these cost, but you can buy these big like 100 packs. I would say you will probably use you will use more than you think that you need. So this usually when people just get the small one, they end up having to go back and buy more. Right? So the 100 pack, you get a much better deal, I think. Okay. All right. Yeah. And then after that, we're going to come back and we're going to work with clay again. So you won't need to buy more clay for that. Right? You should be able to just redo it. Now, the other side of that is that you might choose to buy more clay. Right? So most people in this class only use 2 of these blocks. Right? This is a 2-pound block. Right? So you can see on my syllabus, I have, what did I write there? It says it's 4 to 10 pounds. The reason I put 4 to 10 pounds is because if you want to get more, you can get more, but you don't have to get more. Okay? Usually most people you'll go through about 2 blocks to make something on this size, and it's reusable. So the early preliminary projects you do, you can break those down. Now, if you want to hang on to those, if you ever come and visit my studio, you'll see that my studio is just filled with various projects because I like having them around. They kind of build the vibe of an art studio. So maybe you want to keep them, so you might want to go out and get more. Okay. After we sort of finish up with clay, we are going to jump into a little bit of digital sculpting and digital practice. So, the reality is that in the 21st century, most three-dimensional objects, most three-dimensional design is all done digitally at this point in time. Right? So, in order to sculpt or design well in the computer, you have to understand all of this. So we're going to kind of use all of this to kind of pull towards the end of the semester and kind of bring it all together. Now, the program that we're going to use is a program called ZBrush Core Mini. Right? It's a free program, but you do need to be able to run it. Right? So the final required material for this course is you have to have some kind of computer access. Now, if that's a problem, there are ways that we can possibly work around some different things. So don't, if you don't have a really good computer, but I want people to, we're going to talk in our first Zoom meeting about what your technology needs are, looking towards the end of the semester to be able to use that. So you do have to have some kind of computer access because you're taking an online course, right? So we have to be able to get online. We have to be able to make the Zoom meetings. We have to be able to send things around. Right? You need something that you need some way to be able to download and utilize the ZBrush Core Mini program. So you need some space, I guess, on your computer. The next thing that I can't and I won't require anybody to show their face at the Zoom meetings. However, it has been my experience that we have better community and we have better conversations and we have better interactions with each other when we do all share our faces. So while I don't require you to have a webcam, I highly recommend it. I think you will have a better experience. So, taking whatever steps we can now to kind of figure that out. Now that being said, when we have our Zoom meetings, you can turn your camera off at various times and back on. That's all fine. But when we meet, it works better if we can all see each other, right? So I highly recommend that. Right? And I also noticed that there is better community amongst the students who do show their faces. Also, one last sort of thing on that is that the ability to share three-dimensional projects works so much better with a webcam. Otherwise, all we're doing is taking photographs of things, and and sending them back and forth, and you don't get the entire experience doing it in that way. So it's better if we can try our best to do that. Okay. Last final one. This is not really as much a requirement for this course, but you're all art students taking a college level art class. You should have a journal, right? You need some place to drop your ideas, to put your thoughts down, to sort of record things. In addition, there are going to be times when I am going to ask you to draw in this class and to draw out ideas. You need some place to do it, and it's better if you do it someplace where it's sort of kept together. So, so these are just black-bound journals. I have a whole bunch of them. All right. So that concludes the overview of the materials and tools required for class. Next, you're going to watch the Egg Challenge video and get a little bit of a fun, quick sort of starter project to kind of get us going. The only thing you're going to need for that, and I will go over that in that video, is you will need the hot glue gun. So that's going to be that sort of first thing that you need. Other than that, we will have our first meeting on Monday the 14th. Right, that's our first Zoom meeting. All right, so watch the Egg Challenge video, and I will hopefully see you on Monday the 14th. Talk to you then.